A sunrise on the moon shines against a void scattered with seeds of light. A turn, a last look at this high point of human touch. Then fireworks sparks plummet through the atmosphere towards the sapphire planet. As we fall fizzing and boiling fast through vapours of clouds, the volume of the voices below increases from a murmur to an intense babble, an auditory overload of despair, hope, confusion, uncertainty. Then we're back down to earth once more. We fly over fields to bright golden woods in springtime sunshine, hovering in groves of oak, birch and poplar. Rays of sun catch twirls of dust among sparkling green, crisp brown and fiery red leaves. The music starts to swell. We're out of the woods and crossing the ocean, first across ripples of surf, then across majestic waves, now flying across the foams of lakes and seas, then again across richly verdant countryside, to zoom down upon a country house and whiz through corridors into a studio to see a face radiant with joy, a gleaming white smile set in gleaming white surroundings. The backdrop is a seamless plastic brilliance. Dan wears a creamy suit and an open-necked white shirt to look smart but casual for a smart but casual target audience. Lights caress the makeup, glamorizing his complexion. He starts, "The world we live in is amazing, but for everything we now know, there remains inestimably more that we don't understand at all about it. It's for the sake of understanding that this series has been created. Over the next few weeks, I hope you will experience the new and vital understanding of the world with me, not just in your minds, but in your hearts." As his hand moves from head to heart, the music finally bursts out unrestrained. A camera sweeps out over an ecstatically clapping audience entirely made of Sphinx and Planet TV style. Welcome to the Planet Show. Sophia stands watching at the side of the set, fascinated. She forms a brief "I love you" sign at Dan as he prepares to speak again, but he won't let himself be distracted. "Let me level with you right from the start, people," he says with practiced sincerity. "I'll be trying to get us to understand our global situation so that we can see clearly what to do about it as a society. I have a hope that our perspective on humanity will provide a framework for the rejuvenation of human life. In any case, I guarantee that over the next few episodes your mind will be enlarged, enhanced, stunned, and rocked to the core." Dan's taking a carefully judged line, though he knows he can practically say what he likes. Those he will influence will find it increasingly difficult to not become zealous fans of the Planet Show's message, and that's got nothing to do with the script. But still, he wants to exert his best creative effort. Meanwhile, in its own control room, the dream space is melting, then reforming the signals before broadcast, so quickly that no human could notice the delay. Sophia shadows Dan's lines with silent lips. She helped write the opening speech, which involved a heroic debate over every sentence. But Sophia herself notices Steve next to her steal views of her, sly enough that no one could accuse his intentions through his eyes. Sophia whispers to him, "Dan's investing a lot in promoting an ideal of social evolution through the show. Revolution's not popular though. Not at the moment, no. I think he's hoping to catch as many intellectuals as he can," the financial director responds. "I hope he won't be majoring too much on the intellectual stuff though. It's a good job we have a secret weapon, huh? Can you imagine the power it'll put into our hands eventually?" Steve confides. Sophia wonders at his use of "our" here. Who precisely belongs in that club? On monitors around the studio and screens around the world, Dan's face is imposed over an international montage of rush hour train stations. "Life's busy, so let's start with the biggest question," he says. "What's the meaning of life? Maybe an afterlife will tell you, or time. But we can't wait that long. So I'm going to tell it to you here, right now. The meaning of life is survival, and survival is the exact message we want to be bringing." This opening is on millions of screens throughout Britain mostly, already spilling out across Europe and streaming around the world on half a dozen platforms. A flash vision of his audience lands in Dan's mind as he stands before the camera's blank mirror. Families squabbling, middle classes ironing, Elderly couples and singles sedate in sitting rooms with cats, or huddled together in lounges. The occasional slob with beer-stained vest, becoming surer with each second that he's pressed the wrong button. The audience ranges across every demographic dimension, as famous as Dan Jones already is. But the largest chunk will be teenagers and 20-somethings who tune into Planet TV when they want cracking postmodern images set to psychedelic dance music. Many are hoping that something like that will suddenly break into what they're watching. But those with an attention span who stay watching will on the contrary find that there's something fascinating about Planet TV's much hyped new leader show. Ladies and gentlemen, the main question this series will be asking is, what is a good path for the world now? Does that sound like an academic question to you? Stick with me. I will amaze you with the way the world works, and the way it can work. Take it from a billionaire. This is information you want to hear. I'm offering you the world travelling with me. A beat. But I'm a businessman. In return for the world, I'm asking for something from you, of course. I'm asking you to think about what I'll be claiming in these programs. Perhaps surprisingly, I want you to consider if what I say is right or wrong. Generally, we should be very careful about what to believe from the media, right? So please be equally careful when listening to me in this series. Another $1 billion smile. Dan definitely has to shut up now, as his script editor repeatedly cautioned. With a flick of a switch, the crew in Mission Control cut in with colourful Peruvian flowers and animals, now disappearing fast. The unspoken message is, human stupidity is killing the beautiful world. Stop humanity now. Dan doesn't want to let the evident absolute futility of his ambition interfere with his awareness. Instead, he tells himself that all he has to do is network the show around the world, and he is on his way to power. Not out of vanity, but out of an instinctive urge for survival. As Mission Control edits in a pre-recorded piece of him standing by the Ganges, Dan reflects, I bet I'm oozing charisma. Environmental revolutionary, billionaire, owner of the brand rights for a growing fast food chain, which I started just to practice my logistical skills on. Founder of a chain of sustainable supermarkets. Post-capitalist author. Now who knows, as I try to create economic stability across the world against impossible odds and come out on top. It's possible, but in the end, it's only a game. Staff busy themselves in rehearsed silence, moving booms, lights, dials, sliders. Some watch monitors and drink synthetic coffee from styrofoam cups. Cameras glide frictionlessly as multicoloured thick creepers of cable arrive across the floor. The floor manager presses his headset closely to his ear to concentrate on instructions from his high command. Despite the fact that the Planet show could have been pre-recorded without any loss of impact, Dan insisted on going live, needlessly making things just that little more difficult for everyone. Dan had also wanted the theme music to be Carmina Burana. But the marketing department closed ranks against that, to Dan showing a curious lack of vision. The green light switches on again. Dan's mind is flying. This is his chance to change the world. Live, he thinks. Be rational, be logical, be calm, be cool. Time to talk. This series is designed to be a pro-ecological rant, albeit a lush and spectacular one. But it's about time that the exposure of global culture to itself really got mainstream and insistent, isn't it? Such self-understanding must itself be part of the evolution of society and culture. And I'm going to revolutionise the human heart. Your heart. Dan can see on a monitor that he's being melted into various unlikely locations, including a volcano. Next he's standing on the outskirts of some slum. Then he's in front of an Icelandic glacier, melting. I like that long zoom shot with the icebergs, he thinks. Then in the middle of the rainforest. Finally he's standing in the absolute blueprint of a leafy suburban idyll, a street of identical computer-designed houses, which could be in almost any town in any country in the Western world. Don't panic, Dan says. I'm not going to go on and on about the destruction of the environment, he claims somewhat disingenuously. We shouldn't be so naive as to think that there's only one factor currently significant in human progress. Here we will be looking at the big picture of the future of humanity on Earth. The producer says cut. There's an assumption of ease in Studio One as tension momentarily disperses and taut muscles slacken. Monitors have cut to ads. 4 minutes of commercials followed by a sunny slice of video with a pre-recorded voiceover of 3 minutes 13 seconds. Then it's continuing with the peerless live common pairing. He quickly makes his way to a catering table ballasted with carbs, trailed by a makeup girl shadowing him like a courtier whispering gossiping to the ear of a king. Dan does feel a little like a pharaoh being cast in artificial beauty as he yields to her touch. The girl chatters away in the background of his mind about her latest boyfriend troubles as he drinks coffee. It's too sweet, too instant, but warm at least. Is there anything right now that I need but don't have, apart from good coffee? Dan thinks, temporarily gratified by his situation. The monitors show the crash of waves on a rocky beach, the blue sky streaked with white ribbons, a swerve of seagulls, the arc of a whale. It's an ad for his self-professedly sustainable electric airline. Sophia comes up to speak, emerald-eyeing with uncharitable suspicion the makeup professional leaves. Altering her attention between monitoring Dan and monitoring the monitors, Sophia says, "We just received info about last week's oil depot explosion. It's certain that this was also executed by people who've gone through some of our training." Dan seems to have been barely listening to her, but he replies, "Yes, inevitably. It would have been surprising if that wasn't the case. We need to root out those rogue cells. Who knows what damage they could do if anyone trailed them back to us." Sophia forms her deadliest smile. "I think it would be a good idea if I concentrated on helping Steve solve the problem. I think he's got a few promising leads to follow up." "Good, if you think so." Dan's a little agitated. Subconsciously, he puts his hand between his shirt buttons for a few seconds, Napoleon-like. Then he takes another tentative sip at his frighteningly disgusting coffee. "Please though, Sophia," he says, "perhaps now isn't the best time to bring this back to mind? How's the dream space doing? Is it purring along at top spec?" "It's working just fine." She's unconsciously shredding her own empty cup into blossom strips. "You can't be sure of timescales, though. We had a huge variance over that. It's better that the message slowly worms its way into people's minds. Maybe like a slow worm, eh?" Dan jokes. He's beginning to wish he hadn't given up smoking. It's a pointless wish, since smoking isn't allowed in the studios, especially during filming, and he's just about to go live again in a couple of minutes anyway. But it was an effective way to absorb the nervous energy he abounds in, particularly when his mind shifts up a gear to try to keep pace with his mouth. He comments, "As far as I can tell, all the tests were good for was for fine-tuning the equipment. The real experiment is what we're doing now. It's perhaps unfortunate that we couldn't have used a smaller sample size than a percentage of prime-time Britain, though." The post-commercial clip begins on a multitude of studio screens. Another jungle scene, but now with unsanitary slums in the background. It was chosen to show the developed audience what it means that the rest of the world is still developing. A deep, kind, but faceless voice reassuringly relates sense to whoever's still listening. But the narrative is ignored by the pair stalking the refreshment table. They've heard the words 24 times before. They wrote them. Steve Troy walks towards them, sporting his perennial smirk. Everything's going perfectly, he coos in hypnotic confidence as he joins the pair, adding, "I've just had a look in the dream control room, and there's not a hitch or blip. Our dream message is well oiled and pumping. Now it's just about working the message down to the subconsciousnesses of the general public, and for their minds to start working the way we want them to." A thin, toothy strip widens into a Cheshire Cat's piano keyboard mouth as Steve continues with an explosive whisper. "Dream space is a brilliant invention, Dan. Re-scripting people subconsciously. It really must be the ultimate control of popular opinion. In fact, I'm sure that with historical hindsight, it could easily turn out to be the most important invention of the 21st century. I can feel it in my blood, maybe even in my subconscious. It's a shame we have to keep it top secret. Absolutely, Sophia agrees. But as you say, Steve, our greatest asset must unfortunately remain our biggest secret. Dr. Blake has a good idea how knowledge of the effect of the dream space on audiences' minds would discourage the audience, as much as it encouraged the sponsors. I think even we don't begin to grasp how significant the dream space is, or how dangerous, she muses. I hate to imagine how the governments of the world will react when they eventually find out about it. As swiftly and viciously as they can, I expect. One thing power doesn't like is losing it, or sharing it, Troy qualifies, smiling. Dan says, well, I'm not worried about that, at least for now. At least. We've had government officials crawl over the ground several times, for health and safety and other bureaucratic excuses to pry, and they never suspected anything, at least as far as they let on. They looked in the lab, but inevitably they didn't find anything too strange, only a connection to a mainframe. So it's that very rare thing, a well-kept secret. But still Dan looks round. Steve suggests, if we want to press the deal with Media Europe, the dream space would be an unbeatable bargaining chip. I could sound out their rep about it. Remember him, Giovanni Antinoro? Good man as far as I can tell. As far as these things go, of course. That's something else I don't want to have to think about right now, Dan replies pointedly. If you excuse me. He puts down his dregs of liquid sadism, smooths down his suit, wipes his hair from several misaligned vectors to other misaligned vectors, and crosses the floor to await public exposure before the cold lens. The camera watches like a lion, and the audience is ready to devour him if he falls. Quiet descends in layers. The essential movements of the crew are processed through the furtive use of sign language. Dan feels calm in the centre of a supernaturally slow bustle. This is where it begins to get heavy, Dan reflects, not overly concerned with the artistic gamble, given the dream space. If I fire a volley of big ideas out occasionally, maybe we can draw intellectuals in. It would be good to have some academic cred to lend us authority. The light on the camera in front of Dan switches green again. He says, we're all drowned in propaganda, pumped into our minds high volume by a cynical media intent on the suppression of social self-criticism. Contemporary culture has become the ultimate triumph of style over substance, full of flash and distraction, but ultimately empty. As a demonstration of media confusion, he steps forward and taps the lens. For one, we're immersed in endless messages cultivating in consumerism which fuels the obvious but serious ecological damage we're saving up for our children. Our society is a soup of highly unnutritious spiritual stroke psychological pollution. It's a culture of poisonous envy. Well, my policy is no more mental junk food. At this cue, the camera stopped filming, leaving all screens blank. After a few dead seconds, Dan's disembodied voice continues. You know how poisonous burning plastic is. Well, let's stop breathing the fumes of our synthetic thinking, the lies being pumped out by consumption-backed media. I only want the pure air of truth to pump out across the airways from this station. That's my entire aim. The visuals switch back to Dan's wide grin and open arms. Come with me on a journey to discover the truth. Cut. This instruction is followed by a thumbs up from the floor manager, as in the control room, the visuals are merged into another primordial lava plus theme scene. While the video plays, Dan fiddles with his cufflinks, thinking, we're using a propaganda machine to fight a propaganda machine, as we slowly prepare culture-fried brains for a frightening new world. I guess we're fighting fire with fire then. It's media karate. He looks around the studio, at the cables trailing off out of sight, at engineers checking fuses or chips on various Pandora's box of tricks, as the cameras circle like vultures ready to swoop in on him again. just waiting for the sign. His sweat under the lights melts fissures of foundation into a slow run. Then his cue. Smile. Before we embark together on this adventure, you might appreciate first a few words about who we are and what we're doing. Well, the show's sponsors, the Institute for the Ideological Advancement of Markets, is in fact a charitable branch of Sphinx plc, of which I am the chairman and CEO, for those of you who've just defrosted from storage. Before you ask, we do accept charitable donations. A website and a phone number flash up on the screen. Most investment comes from Sphinx itself, of course, though. One of the central aims at Sphinx is to spread understanding. Indeed, I consider ours to be a voice shouting in a gale, desperately hoping that deaf ears will be opened before it's too late. Some hope, perhaps? Well, tonight, right now, we'll explore the possibilities of creating a new world. That means for your benefit. Stable provision for the world in peace will transform everybody's experience like a purification, and you'll be astounded at how easily it can be done. Dan's reeling out the basic concepts, but he knows that regardless of its budget and high production, a show with content like this could only succeed because of the dream space. A clip cuts in and Dan affirms to himself, I haven't got the time for subtleties, or indeed the patience, but I'll be very happy if half our projected opening audience lasts as far as me blasting global economics into them. Responding to the present visuals, Dan says, these children without a school acquired a school. This village without basic health provision shares a travelling hospital. Meanwhile, we in the technologically dependent world are being forced to structurally reorganise our economy green. As he hears himself say these words, Dan realises how red the road to the green society will be. Then he looks at Sophia, and a feeling of love drops onto the rocks of his mind like liquid pearl. Steve is still wondering if this grand game was a good investment. He whispers to Sophia, for all we know, the whole thing could be a complete failure. Maybe the stuff he's selling really is too close to the truth. Shh! Let me watch this, Sophia whispers back. Long after the filming is finished, Dan leaves Studio One deliberately alone. Dragging himself through now dimmed and quieted corridors, he seeks out a small room he's found in the heart of the mansion, like through with the house. He's keeping this discovery strictly private for now. It's the only privacy around here. It's an old hidden chapel. He's not religious, despite the fact that he's surfing the end of the world. But he goes there for the seclusion and tranquility, in an attempt to renew his short-circuiting mind. More money, more worries. So much money, so many worries he incants as he enters. Too many anxieties. That's what a sense of destiny yields. Maybe I've been so successful that I'm no longer convinced that what I'm doing is right. We've had successful paramilitary ops too. Destroyed GM crops, blasted fast food, supermarkets, sabotaged relay stations, no deaths. The room is stuffily wooden and full of reverent iconography, outlines of saints carved into dull surfaces of stone or wood, and undecipherably grimy oil paintings rendered in detail. A scattering of heraldic badges decorates the drapes and the ceilings. Light enters through the high stained glass, any illumination being quickly absorbed into the almost black panels. Only the dust continues to show any life in the stillness. The room is lit by twilight hanging mellow in the attenuated air. Dan closes his eyes for a few seconds, trying to remember when he last felt peaceful or hopeful. But whenever he comes here, Dan feels the assumption of a most unexpected spirit. He climbs into the sanctuary to look for some sort of peace, maybe even inspiration, but instead he always finds himself questioning his aims and methods. As he lights a candle, he thinks, it's disconcerting. Maybe the surroundings enhance my guilt. That would be a good reason to avoid coming here entirely. but it's the only place in the mansion I can be alone. I can't say for certain what blows into me the feelings I have when I'm in here. It's disquieting, like I'm being touched by something sad in the middle of joy, like a sense of loss. Or maybe it's a sense of birth, of something great coming into being. The strangest things can happen to minds in strange conditions. His gaze settles on a text in the chunky Bible lying open on a blackened oak stand. Holding his candle over it, he can just about read its Gothic typeface. It says, "With great violence the city of Babylon will be thrown down." "Thanks," Dan says to the still air. Motivating perhaps, but not exactly encouraging.